Okay, everyone, we are now live. I'll pass it over to Mr. Mayor Dwight Burley to call the meeting to order.
Thank you, Brittany. Welcome, everybody. I would like to call the meeting to order. Brittany, would you take roll call, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So when I call your name, please indicate that you are present for the record. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
Present.
Councillor Paul Sutherland is just having some technical difficulties, but he will be with us shortly. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
Present.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Grant Pringle.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
Present.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
Present.
Thank you. Everyone is in attendance.
Thank you. Moving on to the agenda. Is there any add-ons to our agenda here today? Seeing none, do I have somebody to move accepting of the agenda, please?
I will move the agenda.
It was moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton. A seconder.
All second.
Second by Councillor Barfoot. Brittany, would you take the vote, please?
So when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against adoption of the agenda as presented. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland is absent. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
4.
Councillor Grant Pringle. When our internet just dropped off for a second. Councillor Grant Pringle, are you for or against the motion as presented?
I am for it.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
Okay, I have a recommendation that the minutes of the council meeting held on March 4th, 2020 be adopted. Do I have somebody to move the motion, please?
Also move.
Moved by Councillor Thompson. Do I have a seconder, please?
Grant.
Moved by Councillor Pringle. Brittany, would you take the vote, please?
Okay, when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion as presented. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland is absent. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
4.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
Thank you, and that vote carries 7-0.
Okay, moving on, special council meeting of April 1st. That the minutes of the electronic special council meeting held on April 1st, 2020 be adopted. Brittany, would you, I need someone to move the motion. Do I have somebody to move the motion?
Carol Barfoot.
Moved by Councillor Barfoot. A seconder, please.
Grant.
I will second.
Moved by Councillor Pringle. Brittany, would you take the vote, please?
Okay, when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland, are you with us?
Yep. 4.
Perfect, thank you. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
4.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
Thank you. That motion carries 7 to none.
Moving
I
on
have
to the
a
agenda,
question.
Deputy Mayor Carlton.
Just a question. We missed the part, the declaration of pecuniary interest. Do we not need that in these meetings?
We certainly do. That's a mistake on the mayor's part, and I'll take credit for
Okay.
it. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, you can declare anytime you see fit during the meeting. Thanks for that, Deputy Mayor Carlton.
You're welcome.
We're moving on to the agenda. Do we have any announcements? No announcements. Public hearings, we have none. Presentations, we have none. Delegations, we have none. Is there any item on the consent agenda that would Councillor Lake deferred? Seeing none, that the Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs adopts the consent agenda as circulated, and that staff be directed to proceed with all necessary administrative actions. Brittany, would you take the vote, please?
I would first ask that you have a mover and a seconder to put it on the floor, please.
Sorry, Brittany. Do I have somebody move the motion, please?
Paul will.
I will, Deputy Mayor.
Moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Brittany, now would you please take the vote?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, that was moved by moved by Sue and seconded by Paul.
Second
Just for the
by
record.
Councillor Thompson. Oh, okay.
So when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against approval of the consent agenda. Councillor Carol Barfoot,
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland,
4.
Councillor Kathy Moore Coburn,
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson,
4.
Councillor Grant Pringle,
4.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton,
For.
and Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
Perfect, and that carries 7 to none.
Okay, we're moving on with our agenda. We're down to correspondence. We have a correspondence here from okay. We have correspondence here from Enbridge Gas, Natural Gas Expansion Program. Is it for information?
Actually, they are looking for a letter of support for expanding gas into the Presqu'île Road area. They did note at this time that all they would need from us is a letter of support. I know that we had provided one in the past, but they are looking for another letter. Also was noted that at this time they are unsure as to whether there would be any financials needed, looking at possibly a property tax deferral, but nothing has come forward officially at this time.
Thanks, Anne Marie. What is council's wish? Do we send out the same letter to Enbridge Gas as we did before? I assume we are going.
That we send that letter out.
Okay, it was moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton, second by
I have a
Councillor,
question, Mr. Mayor.
would you move the motion first, please, Carol?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Okay, it was moved by Councillor Barfoot. Now, Carol, you have a question?
Oh, you said send the same letter out as before, and that said exactly.
Anne Marie, do you have a letter there, or?
I do. They did send us an expression of support for natural gas expansion. So it was actually prepared for us. I can look and see what we sent out before, but certainly this is just on behalf of the municipality. I would like to formally express our interest to have the Presqu'île Road area included in the Enbridge gas list of projects to be proposed to the OEB. And it says for consideration for financial support through the natural gas expansion program. And then based on the draft guidelines, we're aware that Enbridge may be required to include support for the proposed project from the local government as applicable or demonstrated through a written expression of support or commitment to financial support in this project submissions. So it says that we're aware of that. It's not saying that we are going to have to do that, simply because there has been nothing come down yet in regards to the financial contribution, which could be a property tax deferral.
Thank you, Anne Marie. That's just what I was looking for about the financial implications.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's no other questions on motion before us, Brittany, would you take the vote, please?
So when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against circulating the letter to Enbridge Gas, indicating our support, as Anne Marie has just read out to you. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland.
For.
Councillor Kathy Moore Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Councillor Graham Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Stu Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
Thank you, and that motion carries.
Thank you. Our next correspondent is from Impact 2020 Assessment Updates. There's two pieces of correspondence. Is it for information, or is there any questions on the correspondence?
Dwight, I'd like to speak to that, please.
Certainly, Cassie, go ahead.
Thank you. So I asked for these correspondence to be put on this agenda to make council aware of what MPAC has done. Because of the COVID situation, this was supposed to be the year that everyone received their reassessment starting in 2021. They've deferred that, and for 2021, your assessment will be the same as 2020. So as this affects 100% of our ratepayers, I thought it should be brought to council's attention.
Thanks, Cassie. Is there any questions on the correspondence? Seeing none, Brittany, we'll just accept this as information.
Sorry, that was Councillor Sutherland.
Councillor Sutherland, go ahead.
Yeah, for Cassie, is this going to affect our 2020 budget then?
No, because our 2020 budget was already based on our 2020 assessment. So it makes no difference to our budget.
Thank you.
Okay. So we'll accept this as correspondence?
Correct.
Okay. Moving off our agenda, then we're down to committee reports. Sorry, was somebody saying something? No. We're down to that the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on March 11, 2020 be adopted, including recommendations COW 2020-24 to COW 2020-31. Do I have a mover to put it on the floor, please? Moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Thompson. Do you have any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, Brittany, would you take the vote, please?
Absolutely. And Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, was that moved by Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton?
Moved by Councillor Colburn,
Okay,
second
thank
by
you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much. Okay, when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against adoption of the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes of March 11th, 2020. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland.
4.
Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
4.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
4.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
4.
Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
And that carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're down to the staff reports. I have a motion that report OPS 2013 from Tyler Yonke, Director of Operations, be received, and that Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs authorize the CAO to secure the SCM grant Appendix 1, and that OCWA Aqua be authorized to complete the facility study to evaluate the biogrid facility, and the Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs utilizes the service memorandum funding for small rural community grant received in 2019 to assist with funding deficiencies to pay for the township share of $58,769.89. Do I have somebody to move the motion, please?
I also move the Deputy Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Carlton moves. Do I have a seconder, please?
Oh, well.
Councillor Pringle, were you moving or second the motion?
I
Again.
will.
Okay, Paul is.
Okay. So we have the motion moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion before us?
Yeah, I have a question.
Councillor Barfoot, go ahead.
Okay. Pay for the township share of 58,000.
Sorry, Carol. Brittany, the voice is going in and out and I can hardly hear.
Councillor Carol Barfoot, try again. Just really enunciate, please.
Okay, our share is 58,000 and change. Are the partners in this endeavor paying the same?
Carol, I'll let Tyler speak to that.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Burley. If you would like, I could give a high-level overview of this or just answer the question. They will be providing some work in kind. And again, is our partnership, I imagine you're referring to Aqua. If you are referring to Chatsworth itself, they are not part of this as a feasibility study. And they're really not in consideration of this report going forward.
I have a question for you, Tyler.
Sure.
Go ahead, Carol.
So I'm to understand that we're paying the whole freight on this.
That is correct. Yeah, and the way that we're breaking it out in our financial analysis is trying to utilize our modernization grant that we received last year. In that grant, it actually, in our acceptance letter even, it says, while this investment is unconditional, it is the intent to help modernize services delivery and reduce future costs through investments in projects such as services delivery review, development shared services agreement, and of course capital investments, which the biogrid is.
I have questions also, Brittany.
Go ahead, Councillor Colburn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I feel like for some reason, I feel like this issue keeps coming back. It's like a bad rash. We have a partner municipality who's not interested. We know that this is going to cost us money now and more in the future because presumably the report will come back indicating that it's a worthwhile endeavor. While we have no real reassurances from the wider community that they would be interested in using an SSO type of facility. Given the current environment and our different other unknown expenses that could come up, I don't feel that this is a proper way to spend our money. And I think there could be more meaningful ways to spend this type of modernization grant dollar.
Thank you, Councillor Colburn. Tyler, the main purpose of this report is to get more information to be able to base a proper decision on. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The study aims to determine the optimum technology for upgrading the existing digester and increase the on-site renewable energy generation, and also divert waste from our landfill and produce valuable archaeological soil amendment and improve overall performance of the decreasing operating costs and improving environmental outcomes. So yeah, under the breakdown in the report, it does go on to list the activities that Aqua plans to follow up with. To break down this actual grant, what we're discussing, it is a 50% grant. So back in August last year, a report came to council to proceed with this grant application. It's since come back that we have been granted it. And they're waiting for our go-ahead, obviously. So from Aqua's standpoint, or sorry, not standpoint, what they want to do for a feasibility study is basically gather more information so that we can create a more informed decision moving forward. Everything from feedstock, the type of equipment we're using, and even our FIT program versus renewable gas going back into our main lines.
Thank you, Tyler. Is there any more discussion on the motion before us?
The Deputy Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Carlin?
Yes, I'd just like to comment. I think this is a very valuable almost tool for us to use to get more information on the biodigester, to figure out where it does fit in. It's one of our facilities, and I think it is a valuable resource in the community, or can be moving forward. And I think we really should explore that at this time.
Thank you. Kathy, Councillor Colburn?
Yeah, I feel like those are the same kinds of comments we heard when council of the day was deciding to build the biodigester in the first place. We can talk about potential till the cows come home, but until you have the users in place to use it, we're just spending more of ratepayers' money for a fantastic facility that sits there and doesn't get used.
Thank you. Is there any other comment?
I have a question.
Councillor Barfoot.
Carol Barfoot. I guess my concern is we have an unwilling partner in this. Every dollar we spend also benefits our unwilling partner. We're in partnerships. I feel they should, our partner should be picking up part of this expense. Yes, it probably would be good, to get this done. However, Mr. Mayor, you're on the BioGrid committee.
Yes, I am.
Chair of it. Okay.
Yes, I am.
So why aren't our partners? They're going to benefit from this as well. So when are we hoping to get our money back from this?
Deputy Mayor Carlson sits on that committee with me too, Carol, and the whole intent of this report, we need to have more information to be able to base a proper decision on. Our other partner in the bar adjuster, Chatsworth, have made it very clear they do not want to put any capital money into the bar adjuster. They basically don't want to move forward with anything. Sorry, I can hardly, I can't hear what's going on.
I'm just waiting patiently, so you're just hearing me be quiet.
Councillor Thompson, do you want to comment?
I do. I think there are some things that concern me about this. I mean, we are now 14 years into this or so, and we've done a lot of time and we've spent a lot of money just waiting to get around that corner, and each bit of effort that we make is just going to be the thing that we need. And so I kind of feel like Charlie Brown. And for those of you that can remember, just as we get ready to kick the football, Lucy pulls it away. And I feel like that's happened over and over again. And in this time, I guess my concern is we have a partnership and we have a management model that is a couple representatives from each council, and they meet in isolation and they set a budget that we don't have control over and we don't talk about. And when we do talk about vision, the vision is very clear. We have a partner that doesn't want to engage in this at all. And they make some very good reasons why they talk about that, why it's not working. And I won't restate what Councillor Coburn has said because she did it very articulately. I guess my concern would be, based on our government model, which is a committee outside of us meeting and making decisions about the biodigester, and based on the funding arrangement, which is us continuing to roll money into this, and further that we have a partner that's saying, I don't want to put any more money into this, it seems a bit absurd for us to throw $60,000 at an idea that we might learn a little bit more about a facility that a partner doesn't want to expand. So it just seems to be a bit like irresponsible use of the money.
Any other comments?
I would have a couple comments quickly too.
Go ahead, Councillor Sullivan.
I tend to agree with Councillor Thompson. It's been a project that's been going on for years, and we're not gaining anything or getting anywhere, it seems like. And as of right now, I think we need to kind of put aside our erratic spending, especially in the time we are in right at this given moment, and maybe sit tight and wait. And if there's a deadline and they're really wanting us to put forward, maybe they should be stepping up and increase or allowing us to wait another month or 2 months until we can make a better decision when we can all sit down together.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Tyler?
I don't think that's completely off the table. I know we've asked for 2 or 3 extensions at this time, and with this whole COVID pandemic that we're under right now, I know the government is being, I'll use the word lenient towards their deadlines. So that's something we can definitely reach out and see if we can get another further extension and bring back to council if desired.
Could I respond, Dwight?
Go ahead, Councillor Sullivan.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Tyler. Could we defer this then until Tyler gets back to us, if that would be okay?
I'll refer that to Brittany.
Okay, so we have a motion to defer moved by Paul. Do we have a seconder for that motion?
Do we have a seconder?
I would second that.
Okay, and Mr. Mayor,
Sorry, Brittany.
Sorry, I muted myself. My apologies. So with your permission, Mr. Mayor, I will call for a recorded vote on the deferral.
Brittany, I have a question about this, if I can, before you do the vote.
Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Kat.
So if we vote against this motion to defer and it's turned down, do we go back to the original motion as presented in the agenda?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against deferral of this motion. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
Opposed?
Okay. Councillor Paul Sutherland.
4.
Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
Opposed?
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
Opposed.
Councillor Graham Pringle.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
4.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
And the motion to defer carries 4-3.
Thank you. So the first motion is just pulled. Brittany?
Correct. Consideration of this motion and the appended report will be deferred for consideration at a future meeting. Is it council's wish that this is deferred following the end of the emergency period?
I would like to see what Tyler's response would come back from the province, see what they're going to, what it allows to do.
Tyler here. I can provide update once received, working with Cassie as well as she helps us out with the grant funding.
Okay. All right, moving on to our agenda. That the Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs receive report OPS 2020-18 dated March 18, 2020, Water Systems 2019 Summary Report, Schedule 22, and the file as information. Tyler, do you want to speak, or I'll ask for a mover to put on the floor, please?
I can move.
No, you can't. Who moved that, please?
That was Kathy.
Kathy. Move by Councillor Coburn, second by
Deputy Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Carlton. Is there any discussion on the motion? Or sorry, Tyler, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Burley. As we see a lot of water reports come through this council chambers, this is one that is actually regulated by the Ontario Regulation 170.03. It's basically a Schedule 22. It's a summary of our reports, and to be as undetailed as possible, it points out our non-compliances. So for Aqua, I think they're doing a great job. We do have one non-compliance of the Potawatomi water system. And to detail that was a loose cap on top of our well, and it has since been remediated. This is one that was supposed to go to council by March 31st. By law, we have got an extension, or sorry, notified the appropriate regulatory authorities, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can.
Thanks, Tyler. Does council have any questions on the motion before us? Seeing none, Brittany, would you take the vote, please?
Absolutely. So when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion as presented. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
4.
Counselor Paul Sutherland.
4.
Counselor Kathy Moore Coburn.
4.
Counselor Ryan Thompson.
4.
Counselor Graham Pringle.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
4.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
And that carries. Thank you.
Thanks, Brittany. Our next motion is that report OPS 2020-019 from Tyler Yankee, Director of Operations, be received, and that the Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs awards RFT 2021 to Team Truck Centers for the purchase of a 2021 Western Star with full snow clearing equipment as specified in the tender submission for $336,000 plus HST. Do it someone to move the motion put on the floor, please?
Grant.
Moved by Councilor Pringle. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second.
Moved by Councilor Thompson. Tyler, do you want to speak to the motion or to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Burley. This was a scheduled replacement of truck 210 that has it has a good service life with us, but we'll be retiring it hopefully once we receive this truck. And again, the plan is to receive it for fall next year. As for the tender, we sent it out for approximately a 3-week period. I think it was 3 weeks or 4. And we came back with 5 bidders, which is excellent if you ask me. It was unfortunate that 3 of the 5 bidders were found to be in non-compliance of the tender. Bring your attention over to the bid summary sheet, if you will. It outlays, the reasons that these bidders didn't make the qualifications that we specified in our tender, and that's what has driven staff's decision and this report to the Western Star, making all the qualifications and also being the lowest bidder from that point. And again, I'm open to any questions or comments that council may have.
Does council have any questions on the motion? It's open for discussion. Seeing none, Brittany, would you take the vote, please?
Absolutely. So when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion. Counselor Carol Barfoot.
4.
Counselor Paul Sutherland.
4.
Counselor Kathy Moore Coburn.
4.
Counselor Ryan Thompson.
4.
Counselor Grant Pringle.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
4.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
Thank you, and that motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to our agenda, reserves and reserve fund transfer. The report from Cassie Rocca, Director of Finance, regarding 2019 reserves and reserve funds transferred be received. And that the Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs approve the reserves and reserve fund transfers as detailed in report FIN 2022, and that the Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs approves that any remaining 2019 surplus deficit be transferred to from the work in capital reserve. Do we have a mover to put on the floor, please?
I'll move. Carol Barfoot.
Moved by Councilor Barfoot. Do I have a seconder, please?
Paul
I
Sutherland.
second, Deputy Mayor.
Moved by Councilor Sutherland. Cassie, do you want to speak to the report?
Yes, thank you. So this report is just further approving reserve and reserve fund transfers that were done as year end. Some of them were already approved via budget or reports to council, but what I wanted to do was outline to council, the total reserve and reserve fund transfers we made each year, because I often get the question, what actual amount of reserves did we spend? So this shows you that in the chart below. A couple things to comment on. The water systems, they are self-funded, so any surplus or deficit at the end of the year has to be transferred to reserves. I like to also keep like the cemeteries, the tennis courts, the boat launch, the kind of things that we collect a specific user fee for. I like to keep that money and put it in reserves for those specific uses. So that's why you see small transfers related to those items. The one thing I wanted to point out as well was the community improvement plan. So Grey County gave us $20,000 towards a community improvement plan. We haven't passed the planning things we need to do to allocate that money yet. So we're just putting it into a reserve for future use, which the county is okay with. Other than those few items, I didn't have anything to highlight, but all questions welcome.
Thanks, Cassie. Does council have any questions on the motion or any discussion?
I'd ask a question if I could, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Councillor Colburn, go ahead.
Cassie, I hope this isn't a ridiculous question, but I see a lot of money going into the reserves, as you mentioned, from the water systems. Is that typical year to year? And if so, are we charging the right amount for those users?
It is somewhat typical. So what we do on our water systems, minus Oxiden, because it's a bit of its own fish right now, when we're setting our water rates for the other water systems, what we do is say we want to collect 20% of the user rate in order to put it away for future capital expenses. Our water systems are kind of worrisome in that we don't do a lot of improvement work on them until it's an emergency. And when a water line fails, it fails big. And I oftentimes refer to when all those pipes froze in the city of Owen Sound and then they had like millions upon millions of dollars of replacements. So that's what you're seeing there is the 20% that we collect from our users for future capital.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cassie. Is there any other discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, Brittany, would you take the vote, please?
Absolutely. When I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion as presented. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland.
For.
Councillor Kathy Moore Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton. Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton. Sue, are you still with us?
I see that I am.
Okay, are you for or against the motion?
Can no one hear?
We can hear you now, Sue. Deputy Mayor Carlton, are you for or against the motion as presented?
I am for.
Thank you. And Mayor Dwight Burley?
For.
Thank you, and that motion carries.
Thank you. We're down to removal of holding provisions. Application Z0320. The criteria for removal of the H symbol located in section 19 and section 10.5B of the Township of Georgian Bluffs zoning bylaw 2020 had been satisfied. The site plan agreement has been amended to delineate a development envelope on the subject lands. It is recommended that application Z0320 for Mathis and Priska Moser be approved. Do you have somebody to move the motion? Put it on the floor, please.
Deputy Mayor will move.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Do I have a seconder, please?
Paul will move.
Moved by Councillor Sullivan. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Devin, did you want to comment on it?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. As noted in the recommendation, the criteria have been satisfied. This is actually an addendum report to PL 2020-13 in order to delineate a development envelope on the subject lands as per Gray Sawball Conservation's request.
Thanks, Devin. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Whitney, would you take the vote, please?
Absolutely. When I call your name, please indicate whether you're for or against the motion. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland.
For.
Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
Thank you, and that carries.
Thanks, Brittany.
I'm getting Brittany, or Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Carol.
Hold it a minute. I'm getting all kinds of feedback, and some people's conversations are being clipped. Like you'll get a half a word out or something, but every once in a while I get this faint.
Sorry, Councillor Barfoot, you get a faint what? Sorry?
I can hear other conversations every once in a while, can't make them out. But it's almost like a feedback or something from another area. And every once in a while,
so Councillor Barfoot,
people's words will be clipped.
So Councillor Barfoot, that is most likely an issue with your home internet. So why don't you and I connect following the meeting and we can look at ways of improving it for you.
Just carry on.
We will discuss other options following the meeting and get you set up.
Thanks, Brittany. Brittany, just so you know, I'm sitting in the council chambers and everything seems to fade in and out for me too.
Okay, thank you. If everyone would like to kind of make notes throughout this meeting and let me know what issues you see, send me an email and we'll see what we can do to help you with that. These are growing pains. We're all getting used to the new system. So it helps to identify them now so we can help you as much as we can.
Thanks, Brittany. The next item is zoning bylaw amendment Z0219. The site plan control application SP0120 by 1892866 Ontario Incorporated, Daryl Bolton, owner, for lands described as concession. Part R, 16R, 9, Part 3, Sarawak, be approved and that a bylaw be passed authorizing execution of the agreement. It has been demonstrated that the proposed zoning amendment application is consistent with the County of Gray official plan, recolor gray, the provincial policy statement 2014, and the intent of the zoning bylaw 2020. It is recommended that application Z0219 for lands described as concession 2, part lot 18 RP 16R 9872, part 3 Zerwack be approved. Do I have something to move the motion, put it on the floor, please?
I will move. Carol Barfoot.
Moved by Councillor Barfoot. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second it.
Moved by Councillor Sullivan. Jen, do you want to speak to this motion?
So this application is from Daryl Bolton, and initially the Committee of Adjustment approved a severance for Daryl with conditions for him to enter into a site plan agreement with the township to address the operation of a home industry use on the property. The site plan agreement that is before you this afternoon addresses the operation of the home industry use, as well as the report identifies that the zoning amendment application now meets all of the conditions, or sorry, all of the policy requirements. So the staff report recommends approval of both the site plan agreement as well as the zoning amendment application. At this time, we're not in a position to pass bylaws, as the appeal periods have effectively been frozen. Once the province gives us some more direction on that, I'll bring forward a zoning bylaw for council's consideration. So the recommendation is to approve both of the applications.
Thanks, Jen. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, Brittany, would you take the vote, please?
Absolutely. When I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland.
For.
Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Councillor Graham Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton. Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
Thank you. Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
And that carries. Thank you.
Okay, we're down to addendum report PL 2020-10. With supportive comments from MTO, it has been demonstrated that the proposed application is consistent with the provincial policy statement 2014, the County of Gray official plan, the Georgian Bluffs official plan, and the Township of Georgian Bluffs zoning bylaw 2020. It is recommended that application Z0120 for 20 self-storage care of Paul Dixon be approved. Do I have someone to move the motion, put it on the floor, please?
I can move that.
Moved by Councillor Colburn, second by?
Carol Barfoot.
Second by Councillor Barfoot. Jen, do you want to speak to this, please?
Initially, when this application was presented to council, we hadn't received comments from the MTO, so the recommendation on the application was to receive it for information. We have since received comments from the MTO. They are supportive of the application, provided that the zoning bylaw really limits the amount of commercial use on the property. So they're maintaining that it is a controlled access, and there will be no future intensification of the site permitted. So there is a zoning bylaw that was drafted for council. It will be presented once we receive direction from the province to continue with passing zoning bylaws. What that bylaw does is it identifies that the only permitted use on that property is a storage business within the current footprint. So there are 2 buildings on that property, and the bylaw limits the use to within the space taken up by those 2 buildings on the property. The and as I mentioned, that bylaw will be brought to council at a future date.
Thanks, Jen. Is there any discussion on the motion before us?
Kathy?
Councillor Colburn, go ahead.
Just a question for Jen, if I may. Are there any foreseeable issues proving this now and before we actually get that zoning bylaw in place?
In bringing this report forward, I'm asking council to approve a motion, and then once we have more direction from the province, then I would be able to bring a bylaw forward for you to consider. And once you approve that, that then triggers the appeal period. So that I won't be bringing a bylaw forward until we know more about the future appeal processes.
Okay, Councillor Colburn.
Sure. I'm not entirely sure that answered my question. Sorry, Jan. This is probably me not following you, but I understand. Correct me if I'm wrong. That we're approving this. We're approving this application, and yet the MTO is saying we really need to have a bylaw in place restricting the commercial usage, but we can't do that until sometime in the future. So it's not a problem doing it. Am I interpreting that correctly, and that it's not a problem to issue or to approve this application before we get the bylaw in place?
You're approving you're passing a motion to accept and approve the planning report and the recommendation in that. Mr. Dixon won't be able to legally operate his business until that bylaw has been passed and the appeal period is over. So once the appeal period is over, it will be in effect. So it will be legal. And then Mr. Dixon is also required to meet the entrance permit requirements of the Ministry of Transportation as well.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan. Is there any other discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none. Brittany, would you take the vote, please?
Absolutely. When I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion. Have a tough time, but we're getting through it. So I will recall the vote. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Thank you. And Council, at this time, I would just like to take the opportunity to remind you that if you are not speaking, please mute your microphone so we can eliminate background noise. Councillor Paul Sutherland, for or against the motion?
For.
Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn?
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson?
For.
Councillor Grant Pringle?
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton,
Four.
thank you, and Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
Thank you, and that carries.
Thanks, Brittany. Our next item is the Cameron Site Plan Control Report. The Site Plan Control Application SP0220 and SP0320 by Georgian Holdings Company, Shannon Cameron, owner for lands described as Part Lot 30 and 32, Plan 535, Derby, PT 1, 2, and 9, and 16R 11131, and Part Lot 26, 27, 30, and 32, Plan 535, Derby, LT 28 and 29, Plan 535, Derby PTS 38, and 16R 11131 be approved, and that a bylaw B pass authorizing execution of this agreement. Do I have someone to move the motion to put on the floor, please?
Carol Barfoot.
Moved by Councillor Barfoot. Do I have a seconder?
Grant.
Moved by Councillor Pringle. Jen, do you want to speak to this?
So these are two site plan agreements entered into by Shannon Cameron, who is the owner of essentially Jorcon Holdings, excuse me. And the site plan agreements are a condition of severance that were issued by the Committee of Adjustment. The reason why there are two agreements is because the severance proposal is to create two separate lots, one for the Subaru dealership and one for the Hyundai. So each of those agreements looks at a shared preserving a shared drainage system on the property. So each property has a drainage easement over the other, as well as entrance easements. So they share one entrance as well, and that's at the request of the Ministry of Transportation. So this way, both property owners are aware through these site plan agreements that there's a shared drainage feature on the property, and they're effectively agreeing not to alter the drainage system on the property.
Sorry, is there any discussion on the motion before us?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Barfoot, go ahead.
So, Jen, so was there parkland dedication fees applied or not?
Yes, the Committee of Adjustment did specify parkland dedication fees for this severance.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the motion? See none. Brittany, will you take the vote, please?
Absolutely. When I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland.
For.
Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Councillor Graham Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
Four.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
Thank you, and that carries.
Thank you. We're down to staff reports. The first report is on the budget update. That report from Cassie Rocca, Director of Finance, regarding the 2020 budget be received for information. Do I have somebody to move the motion on the floor, please?
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councillor Colburn. A seconder, please.
Also move.
Moved by Councillor Thompson. Cassie, do you want to speak to this, please?
Yes, please. So as you're all aware, we've yet to pass our 2020 budget. Concerns were raised by some councillors that it was not passed and what my plans were for it. My biggest concern is if we try to pass it now, we won't get appropriate public feedback. Electronic meetings are still very new for all of us, and we're working out the kinks. So until we can ensure that we get appropriate public feedback on this, I don't want to see us pass the budget at this time. Brittany has been working and brainstorming on how we can get the public engaged in our electronic meetings. So maybe in a few weeks we can discuss this again. In the meantime, our operations aren't really hindered by not having a budget. Our purchasing bylaw requires that anything over $5,000 has to be reported to council if it's not in the budget anyway. So that just means that aside from anything routine, staff will just have to bring reports forward to approve purchases. Considering that we're operating just at essential services right now, we're not making big purchases. And the kind of purchases that I've been signing off on lately are old invoices or like repairs and maintenance of vehicles and stuff, which are typically under the threshold anyway. So my plan is to just hold tight until we can get some of the kinks figured out with electronic meetings. And then at that time, once we can ensure appropriate public engagement, I could bring the budget back for another discussion.
Mr. Mayor, you have yourself muted.
I thought everybody'd be happy if I was muted. Is any discussion on the motion before us?
Yes,
Seeing
Mr.
none?
Mayor.
Go ahead, Councillor Barfoot.
I'd just like to thank Cassie. I'm so glad to hear you're saying don't pass the budget. I agree 100%. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion?
Kathy,
Councillor Colburn, go ahead.
I just want to echo that sentiment to Cassie as well. Thank you for a great recommendation. And anytime we're erring on the side of caution where public transparency and collaboration is concerned, I think that's fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Cassie. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Brittany, would you take the vote, please?
Absolutely. When I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion as presented. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland.
For.
Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
And that carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Meeting video recording and live streaming. That report LEG 2028 regarding meeting video recording and live streaming from the acting clerk be received, and the council approved the emergency purchase of live streaming and recording technology from CTRE Productions at a total cost of $16,745.36. Yeah, as included in the 2020 draft budget. Do I have somebody to move the motion on the floor, please?
Grant.
Moved by Councillor Pringle. A seconder, please.
Kathy.
Paul.
Moved by Councillor Colburn. Brittany, you want to speak to this, please?
Absolutely. So just to give you all kind of a brief summary, I know this report was quite lengthy. I just wanted to ensure you all had the appropriate information. So as we all know, and as we approved last week through the amendments to our procedure bylaw, the amendments to the Municipal Act provide for electronic participation as we are doing so today. Now, the difficulty with electronic participation is that we are still held to the open meeting standards as included in the Municipal Act. So clerks and municipal staff have been tasked with finding inventive and creative ways of involving the public in these electronic meetings. Now, the first thing that came to mind in ensuring people had the opportunity to participate in council meetings is ensuring that they have the ability to, one, view the meeting, which is why we are live streaming our meetings. I did have discussions with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, as well as our closed session investigator, being the Ombudsman. And although the Act is fairly vague in how we ensure open meetings, it was just reiterated to me that, you know, we have a responsibility to maintain openness throughout this period. And to me, live streaming was kind of the first step. As Cassie mentioned, we are looking at alternatives to ensure public have the opportunity to participate in a more in-depth way, whether that means creating live events and people can submit comments in real time, or teleconferencing. We're not sure what it looks like yet. It sounds fairly simple, but I can assure you it's more detailed than it seems. So as soon as the amendments to the Municipal Act were announced, I contacted CTRE Productions right away. Due to the short time periods, we did have to make an emergency purchase because the Canada-US border was closing. So we had to get the equipment here sooner than later to ensure we could begin hosting council meetings. So we did have to facilitate an emergency purchase as included in the report. I also included a picture of what our committee room looks like now. There is quite a detailed system involved in this. And as you all know, we had our first meeting last week and it went pretty well, much better than I could have hoped. So I am happy with the system thus far, and we will continue to use it throughout the duration of regular council meetings as well. So I'm open to any questions should anyone have any. Mr. Mayor, you're muted again.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, Brittany, would you take the vote, please?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Dedicated staff. That's somebody sitting through every meeting.
Just to reiterate, sorry, Sue, you kind of came through a little muzzled there. So what I think you asked is, does this system require an additional staff member in every meeting? Is that correct?
Yes, that's what I was asking.
Okay. Yes, you are correct. Now, as everyone knows, for the time being, it's just myself in the clerk's department. So in the future, we will likely have additional staff in the clerk's department, which that role could take over capacity of live streaming. For now, I do have Brian Anderson in-house, our IT coordinator, running the system, and he's become a whiz at it. But yes, in the future, it will require an additional staff member.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Stephanie. I did not hear you at all when you spoke. Is there any other discussion on the motion before us?
Kathy?
Go ahead, Kathy.
So I just wanted to say thanks to Brittany for all the work she's done on this system. We appreciate it.
No problem. And I do recognize we are still working through the kinks. So I'd like to reiterate to the public, we are working on it. We're working on our audio and our internet provisions to better live stream for everyone.
Thanks, Brittany. We all agree. If there's no other discussion on the motion before us, Brittany, would you take the vote, please?
Absolutely. So when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion as presented. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland.
For.
Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
And that carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on our agenda, we're down to public question period. Brittany, has there been any correspondence come in from the public?
Yes, we have had our first question submitted, so thank you to the public for participating in this process. Our first question came from Robin Martin, and she's asked, are you discussing lowering water rates while so many are using more water in these trying times?
I might ask the CEO to comment on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we will take that question, and Cassandra and I will have a discussion around that. And we can come back to council at our next meeting with some recommendations.
Thanks, Anne Marie. Does council have any questions on the questions? See, now we'll move on to our agenda, then we're down to bylaws. In response to COVID-19 provincial emergency measures, all zoning appeal periods have been placed in a hold status. Sorry.
So, Mr. Mayor, that was just Ryan. He had himself unmuted, so you can continue.
Okay. Okay, I'll start again. We're down to zoning bylaws. In response to COVID-19 provincial emergency measures, all zoning appeal periods have been placed in a hold status effective March 16, 2020. Therefore, all zoning amendment bylaws have been pulled for consideration pending additional information from the province. Do I have someone to move the motion?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, this is strictly just for information. On the March 18th agenda, there were zoning bylaws included, but due to the freezing of the appeal periods, they will not be considered at this time. They will be considered at a later date once we receive more information from the province. And if council has any questions, I would ask that they be directed to our planner.
Thanks, Brittany. Does council have any questions on the information before us? Seeing none, I'll move on to the agenda. We're down to bylaw 2020-29. Being a bylaw to authorize a site plan agreement SP0120 with 1892-866 Ontario Incorporated Daryl Bolton. Do I have somebody to move the motion, put it on the floor?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, if you could just read the recommendation first and then call for a mover and a seconder.
Thank you, Brittany. The bylaw 2020-29 being a bylaw to authorize a site plan agreement SP 0120 with 1892-866 Ontario Incorporated, care of Daryl Bolton, be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and endorsed in the bylaw book. Do I have somebody to move the motion, please?
Carol Barfoot.
Moved by Councillor Barfoot. A seconder, please.
Paul.
Moved by Councillor Sullivan. Is there any discussion on the motion before us?
The Deputy Mayor?
Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
No, I was just saying I would second it if you didn't have somebody.
No, I
No
have.
questions.
No, that's been done.
Okay,
Brittany,
no questions.
Brittany, you're noting that Deputy Mayor Carlin keeps cutting out?
Yes, absolutely. We're making notes as we go through.
Thank you. If there's no other discussion on the motion, Brittany, would you take the vote, please?
Absolutely, I will.
You're cutting it, Mr. Mayor.
So when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland.
For.
Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
Thank you, and that carries.
Down to our next bylaw, 2020-30. The bylaw 2020-30 being a bylaw to authorize the site plan agreement SP 0220 with Georgian Holdings be read a first, second, third time and finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation and endorsed in the bylaw book. Do I have somebody to move the motion, please?
Also moved.
Moved by Councillor Thompson. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second it.
Moved by Councillor Barfoot. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none. Brittany, would you take the vote, please?
Absolutely. When I call your name, please indicate whether you're for or against the motion. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland.
For.
Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
Thank you, and that carries.
Bylaw 2020-31. Being a bylaw, no. The bylaw 2020-31 being a bylaw to authorize a site plan agreement SP 0320 was Georgian Holdings be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed the seal of the corporation, endorsed in the bylaw book. Do I have someone to move the motion and put it on the floor, please?
I so move.
Moved by
I'll second.
Councillor Corbett, second by Councillor Thompson. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Brittany, would you call the vote, please?
Sure. When I call your name, please indicate whether you're for or against the motion. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland.
For.
Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Councillor Grant Pringle,
For.
Mayor Dwight Burley, Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton,
For.
and Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
And that carries. Thank you.
Bylaw 2024. The bylaw 2024 being a bylaw to authorize a site plan agreement for lands described as Lot 42, White Cloud Island, be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, and sealed with a seal of the corporation, and endorsed in the bylaw book. Do I have someone to move the motion, please?
I'll move it.
Moved by Councillor Thompson. A seconder, please.
I'll second
I'll
it.
second it.
Okay, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Is there a discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Brittany, will you take the vote, please?
Absolutely. So just to clarify, that will be reflected as moved by Councillor Paul Sutherland and seconded by Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton. When I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion. Councillor Carol Barfoot. Councillor Carol Barfoot. Councillor Barfoot, you have yourself muted.
No, I don't. For.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Councillor Paul Sutherland.
For.
Councillor Kathy Moore Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
Thank you, and that carries.
Okay, down to bylaw 2025. Being a bylaw to remove the holding eights provisions on lands described as Lot 42, White Cloud Island in the Township of Georgian, Bluffs, geographic Township of Keppel. Do I have somebody to move the motion to put it on the floor, please?
All will.
Deputy Mayor.
Moved by Councillor Sutherland and second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Is there a discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Brittany, will you take the vote, please?
Absolutely. When I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion as presented. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland.
For.
Councillor Kathy Moore Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
And that carries.
Moving off bylaw 2020-32. The bylaw 2020-32 being a bylaw to authorize a contract with WSP Canada Incorporated. You read a first, second, third time, finally passed, signed by the mayor, clerk, sealed to seal the corporation, and endorsed in the bylaw book. Do I have someone to move the motion and put it on the floor, please?
Also move.
Moved by Councillor Thompson. A seconder, please.
Kathy.
Paul will move it.
Moved by Councillor Colborne. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, Brittany, will you take the vote, please?
Absolutely. When I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland.
For.
Councillor Kathy Moore Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
4.
Councillor Grant Pringle,
4.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton,
4,
and Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
And that carries.
Thank you. Down to bylaw 2020-33. The bylaw 2020-33 being a bylaw to adopt an acting clerk to appoint an acting clerk and acting clerk, deputy clerk be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation endorsed in the bylaw book. Is there, do I have somebody to move the motion and put it on the floor, please?
I'll gladly move the motion.
I will so move.
Moved by Councillor Sutherland, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councillor Barfoot?
Yeah. Have interviews started for the acting deputy clerk?
Mayor Dwight Burley, if I could respond to that, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So interviews have started for a contract role of administrative assistant. They actually are being held tomorrow. So at this time, our interim CAO, Anne Marie Shaw, is being appointed acting deputy clerk.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion on the motion? Brittany, would you take the...
No, go ahead.
Councillor Barfoot, do you have another comment?
No, I was just saying, no, go ahead.
Thanks, Carol. Brittany, would you take the vote, please?
Absolutely. When I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion as presented. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland.
4.
Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
4.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
4.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
4,
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
And that carries.
Thanks, Brittany. We're down to unfinished business. Notice of motion. Whereas Cobble Beach has requested that the township donate $500 in support of the 2020 candidate celebration being held at Cobble Beach on July 1st, 2020. Now therefore, Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs approves donation of $500 to Cobble Beach in support of the 2020 candidate celebration. Do I have someone to move the motion, put it on the floor, please?
I will move it, and then I have a question.
I have moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton. I need a seconder, please.
Also move.
Second by Councillor Thompson. Deputy Mayor Carlton, you have a question.
My question involves what happens if Canada Day celebrations are not going ahead on July 1st. Should we have something in this motion to reflect that?
I'm going to ask the CEO.
that.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Anne-Marie.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think what we would do is if they are going ahead, we would proceed with the donation. And if they are not, then we would not go ahead with the donation.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on the motion before us? I'm not sure if somebody spoke or not. Seeing none? Brittany, would you take the vote, please?
Absolutely. When I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion. Councillor Carol Barfoot,
4.
Councillor Paul Sutherland,
4.
Councillor Kathy Moore Coburn,
4.
Councillor Ryan Thompson,
4.
Councillor Grant Pringle,
4.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton,
4.
and Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
And that carries.
Thank you. Okay, we're down to Councilor Colburn. You want to have a discussion about ATV use on NEC trails. Comment from you first, please.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe Anne Marie is going to speak to this further as well in her report later in the agenda. I've had a number of residents who have come forward lately with current concerns about the use of 2 of our trails in the Gleason area, the Len Hawley and Curly Harnden side trails. So I think that the concerns are really twofold. More imminently, ATVs are using the trails now more than ever with the early spring we've had and everyone having much free time on their hands. Some of the residents are feeling that this is creating a safety concern on the trails for those who wish to use the trails for walking, for their mental health and well-being during a time of relative social isolation. So that's a more immediate concern that I think council needs to deliberate on. Just to add to that, in case not everyone is aware, Gray Sauble Conservation Authority has closed the entrance at the other end of the trail, the Bruce Trail entrance that leads to Bruce's Caves. And I believe that's in relation to the pandemic concerns and the need for not congregating and maintaining social distancing. The difficulty with that is they're closing it at one end and we're leaving it open at the other end at both of the entrances, Len Hawley and Curly Harnden. So we're not assisting Gray Sauble to any great extent when we're allowing traffic entering into those trails from our end. So for those reasons, I think we need to think about closing our entrances to the trails as other municipalities have done as well for those safety concerns. And I think we need to do so with a barricade and some appropriate signage. That's the issue at hand. Further to those sort of more imminent concerns, we really do need to get back to looking at our bylaw 27/2016, which currently allows motorized recreational vehicles on all of our roadways and road allowances. And it doesn't make any distinction for roads that fall within protected areas of the Niagara Escarpment. That is something that council has been tossing back and forth for, I believe, over 4 years. I've said it at council before, and I'll just repeat myself. I did meet with one of the provincial supervisor enforcement individuals with the Niagara Escarpment Commission, O.J. McDonald, and he clearly stated that our bylaw is in violation of the Niagara Escarpment Plan, and that we need to do something about it. So I'll leave that part for Anne Marie to comment on, especially since I believe she's had a meeting with Mr. McDonald since we spoke last.
Thanks, Kathy. Anne Marie, comment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Coburn, can I just get some clarification? Are you talking about closing the entrances at Bruce Caves by this with Gray Sauble at that area there, or all trails?
So the Bruce's Caves has already, my understanding is, I haven't been out to check, but my understanding is that it's already been closed by Gray Sobel Conservation Authority. I'm recommending in a similar vein, we close the entrance to that very same area at our ends, which are the Curly Harnden side trail and the Len Hawley loop, both of which folks can enter onto and move straight back to Bruce's Caves.
Okay.
So those are the only two in particular that I'm hearing that there's a safety concern with at present I've heard from about 6 different individuals, residents, and I believe council also received a letter from 2 of those folks.
Okay, so what we can do then is, I believe staff were out today to have a look at the area, and we will also contact Gray Sobel and work with them on what, if there are some safety concerns that they might have too, then just how we might mitigate those. Certainly we can look at that. As for the less imminent part about it and the changing of the bylaw, I have had conversations and correspondence with the Niagara Escarpment Commission through Mr. McDonald, and I have asked him for some accurate details on the issues, the locations, and the solutions. He did inform me that there is correspondence coming to the Township of Georgian Bluffs regarding our bylaw, but also regarding a few other compliance issues, and that correspondence is to arrive next week. So that will give us something that we can set a course moving forward on the issue.
Thanks, Anne Marie. Does any other council? Sorry, was that you, Kathy?
It is. I'm so sorry, but my computer just completely shut down and I missed almost all of Anne Marie's report. I have switched to a different computer here and rejoined the meeting. Apologies, Anne Marie, but I missed, you had started to say that OJ, you've requested that OJ provide specific or accurate, I think you said accurate information, and I missed everything for that.
That's okay. I don't mind saying it again. I did ask for accurate details on the issues, locations, and some of the solutions. And he did inform me that we are to receive correspondence next week. And that correspondence will be in regards to bringing us into compliance and what that looks like. And it will also set a course for us so that we can move forward on the issue. And so I'm looking forward to that correspondence next week, and we'll certainly bring it to our next meeting.
Thank you very much.
So, Anne Marie, we look forward to your report on the April 22nd meeting if you get the information you need.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so we'll move on for agenda down. Sorry, sir.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
I received message from Zach, our facilities manager, that the master rec and trail plan, what did we think? My recommendation to him was to put it off until council could meet as a whole, because there could be some spin-off from what the Niagara Escarpment is saying, what our bylaws say. I think they're all intertwined with our parks and rec master plan. So that was my opinion. It's up to the rest of council, but we have to be careful. There's no sense in pushing through an incomplete document.
Thanks.
Can I comment on that, Mr.
Yeah, go ahead, Anne Marie. Go ahead, Anne Marie.
So Zach did send out the revised version to members of the committee that were part in the Master Trails Plan. I think just as an FYI that, that we had received a revised version, but I think the intent is that it will come to a future meeting with a PowerPoint discussing what the differences are between the last version that council saw and what the revisions are now from the public feedback. But certainly we will be looking again at a time when we can get the public involved. So that will happen at a later date. Thank you for that feedback, Councillor Barfoot.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks, Anne Marie. Okay, so we'll move on to our agenda then. We're down to new business. A verbal update from the interim CEO regarding COVID-19. Anne-Marie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I wanted to thank and recognize all of our staff at Georgian Bluffs. It's been a challenge to try and reimagine our work environment, ensure that we're keeping staff safe, that we're social distancing, and still keeping, the services moving forward at the township. So certainly it's been different working conditions for the last 4 weeks. The orders from the province that we get are coming almost daily, and so interpreting the order and determining what the best approach is for Georgian Bluffs to implement into our operating day-to-day. And then, of course, getting the word out to residents has been time-consuming, and it's been all-encompassing most days. I just wanted to reassure Council that when we are looking at the orders and trying to interpret them, we are consulting a lot of our partners. We're consulting other municipalities, the county, province, and some of our sector associations too, such as AMO and others. We're also looking to fire and police, and we're also using our emergency control group for when there is an issue that we think maybe goes beyond our everyday ability as directors and CAO to look at solving. So again, it's been quite a process and a learning process, along with all of our own responsibilities at home for our families and childcare and keeping ourselves healthy and learning to work in a different environment. It's been quite a journey over the last 4 weeks, and I just want to thank everybody. As for updates, they do change daily, so I'm actually a little bit concerned that if I start listing them all right now, they might change by tomorrow. But I can let you know that, again, we do remain closed to the public, but we do have township services remain ongoing. Our finance, public works, building, and planning, we still are moving forward. We are subject to some limitations that have been imposed by the province, but we do continue to move forward. Our recreational services are closed along with our outdoor recreational spaces and our boat launches at this time too. We are working, the province did initiate the closure of campgrounds, except for people whose only address is at the campground. We are reaching out to local campground and RV parks to ensure that they are aware of the provincial order and that there are consequences if it's not followed. As for individual departments, I would encourage the public to call our office if they're unsure, or to visit our website. We are keeping our website up to date as much as possible with all of the different issues that are ongoing. We did initiate our emergency control group. At any time when you call an emergency, or when you declare an emergency, that is what happens. We are meeting weekly. At this time, the first couple of meetings, what we did do is just try to establish the group and what we would be bringing forward. The only item that we really have brought forth to the control group was looking at enforcement. There was an order coming down that municipal bylaw enforcement would be assisting in helping people with complaints coming forward about buildings or I guess businesses that were open, that were not essential services, and gatherings of more than 5 people. We have limited capacity to do that. Right now, Crime Stoppers has also set up their line so that you're not calling 911 about something, one of those issues. So there are some options out there. But basically that's pretty much it for an update on our emergency control group, other that when we do meet, we do also discuss any other orders or changes that are happening. And I would be happy to answer any questions from council.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Does council have any question of the CEO?
Kathy?
Go ahead, Councillor Coburn.
Sorry, earlier on in your report, Anne-Marie, did you say that our boat launches are open?
They're closed.
Oh, they're closed. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
No problem.
Thank you. Thanks, Anne-Marie, for that update. I really appreciate it. Moving on, for our next item on our agenda is regarding frequency and time of a council meeting throughout the emergency period. Anne-Marie, you want to start off a comment on this?
Actually, I believe that Clerk Brittany Drury is going to take that.
Sorry, Brittany, go ahead.
No, that's okay. So I just wanted to put this on here to get everyone's feedback regarding what they'd like to see the council meeting structure look like throughout the remainder of this emergency period. As I kind of outlined for you last week and further to the procedure bylaw amendments, only council will be meeting for the time being. As we discussed last week, should we move beyond a few months in this scenario, then we could readjust those amendments to allow, for example, committee of the whole meetings. But for now, we are restricting it to council ideally just to deal with emergency issues. So, for example, today's meeting was called to finalize outstanding business as a result of the canceled March 18th meeting. So I don't anticipate future agendas throughout this emergency period being quite as heavy and as detailed. So I'm kind of just looking for your feedback. We had discussed at a staff level of potentially having 2 council meetings a month. So that would mean our next council meeting would be on April 22nd, should we opt to do so. So I'm just looking for your feedback regarding frequency as well as timing, if the 1 o'clock times work or if we should move it to a later start date. So I'm open to comments.
Thanks, Brittany. I'll start off with my comment. Again, thanks to staff for getting this so we can have council meetings. Very different. An old guy like me takes a lot of training, so that's an ongoing thing. I really feel that we should meet at least twice a month, and I have no problem trying to work our working councilors' time and our staff time that we'd hopefully keep the meeting at 1 o'clock. Our next meeting probably won't be quite as intense and as long as what this one has. So just keep that in mind. That's my comment. Does any other councillor have a comment?
I'm hoping to be kind of selfish and go first here because...
Councillor Thompson, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to start by thanking everybody at the office. Cassie, Anne-Marie, Brittany, your leadership has been really amazing through this. To sort of navigate these times, and Tyler as well, providing us information and trying to keep all of our roads and administration moving forward during a really difficult time. And I've been really impressed with the way that we've managed that pretty flawlessly. I am going to have to leave here before too long. I know that these meetings are difficult to arrange and they're longer because of the need to sort of plod through slowly and get everyone's individual comment in, and that's terrific. That's what we need to do. I'm excited for live streaming and the recording as well. I whatever the group decides, I don't want to drive the timing. Probably 1 o'clock midweek is the worst time for me. We're still operating here as an essential service, and we're doing it with less and less and less each week. So we're getting busier and busier and busier. So to steal, 2 or 3 hours out of the middle of the day in the middle of the week is pretty impossible for me. But I don't think that one person can drive the whole process. So I don't want us to change everything for my schedule. And I'm going to have to leave. So luckily you guys can talk about that after I leave, and nobody will feel uncomfortable with me having to listen to it. So it's not to say I can't, but to think that for me to say I can probably steal hours in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week will be really difficult. So having said that, I'll turn it over to you guys. Those are my comments. I think that we are going to come out this other side of this, and from all things that I see before us, we're going to come out of this stronger, because we're going to have live streaming, and we're going to we will have navigated these really difficult times together. So excited for that, and I will end my long diatribe.
Thanks, Councillor Thompson.
Grant.
Grant, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm kind of one in the same boat as Ryan on that too, with us kind of being deemed an essential service here and working with, well, we got half the people that we had 3 weeks ago. It is very difficult actually to try and rearrange to be ready to go for 1 o'clock and rearrange the rest of my day. I have no problem with doing an afternoon meeting. That's not a problem. I just wonder if we couldn't put it off a little bit of time to even 2:30. Being short-staffed and short manpower, we're scrambling to get things done, and I don't want to. I'm the same as Ryan. I don't want to upset the apple cart, but if we could sway an hour and a half or out of the day, that would help me out tremendously on my end. Again, it's whatever the group wants to decide. If we can't do it, that's okay. I can make arrangements to figure something else out too. But I have no problem with doing an afternoon meeting. It's just if we could sneak a little bit of time off later in the day, that'd be better. So,
thanks, Grant. Good comments, and that's what we wanted to hear. Any other councillor have a comment?
Kathy.
Go ahead, Councillor Colburn.
So what I think I heard from Ryan was that during the workday doesn't work for him. So putting it back an hour and a half, I don't think we're going to deal with his concerns. And I think it's important that at this particular time, especially, we have all hands on deck as far as council is concerned. I would just add that I know a couple of residents who would have liked to have listened in to the live stream today, but some of them are still working and are still working from home. And in order to ensure the most transparency and participation with the public, I'd really like to see it at the end of the workday, 5 o'clock, 5:30, or in the evening.
Thanks, Cassie. Any other comments?
Carol Barfoot.
Carol, go ahead.
I like to work with staff and the rest of council, so whenever I'll be available.
Thanks, Carol. Deputy Mayor Carlton, are you still there?
I'm still here. I'm the same as what Kathy and Carol have said. I'm totally flexible. Anytime works for me. And yes, I think I'd like to have all the rest of council able to be there as well. So later in the day, if that's what it takes, we can do that.
Definitely. Anne-Marie, you're still there?
I am.
Anne-Marie, could you, it sounds like it would work better if we could for the council members that are still working in their jobs. I'm working in my job, but can you and Brittany maybe see how you can work with staff? I guess it'd be you and Brittany and Brian and whoever. If we can move the meeting later on in the day, 4 or 5 o'clock or something like that.
Certainly, we can have a look at that. I mean, 4:30 to me would probably work fine. I'm not expecting all of our meetings to be 2 hours long, just because there are some things we're limited on doing from the province. So either of those times would work. In fact, we can also reach out to Grant and Ryan and just see what time might work at the end of the day for them.
Is that okay with council? That sounds like a great idea. Maybe you could send out just an email to all council.
Sure.
Give council to comment and what they feel their times. As for Carol, we can't go to her place to have supper, so or we just no. Anyway, I think that's a simple thing. There is 3 of us. They're very flexible. I guess maybe 4 of us. The 2 of us are working. It'd be nice to see them work. Let's work with them and see what we can do.
You bet we will.
Okay.
Definitely.
If that's
definitely,
okay,
Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So let's move on.
Mr. Mayor, can I just add one comment?
Yes, go ahead, Brittany.
I just want to ensure that council is okay with limiting meetings to twice a month at whatever time we establish with council.
I would hope that it would be my wish as mayor. I would hope that we at least have the 2 meetings. That's my wish. What's the council think?
Deputy Mayor here.
I've got comments.
Would agree.
Okay, Councillor Sullivan.
I think what Brittany's trying to say is limit it to 2. At this time, we're not going to have all of the issues in the township coming forward. It's just to be the important ones, and she's already stated that the next meeting she's hoping are only going to be about an hour long. So I think if that's what we're hoping for, and if we do see a need to have a 3rd one at some point in time because there's a very dire issue coming about, we'll have it then.
I agree. I think, Brittany, you heard that?
Yes, thank you.
And hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you. So we will establish the next council meeting for April 22nd. I will circulate invitations and upload notice once we have a finalized time.
Thanks, Brittany. Before I read our conferring bylaw, I would just take this opportunity to thank our wonderful staff and thank council. These are trying times. I'm hoping that all of council have a very happy Easter. I do know, just so council knows, I seen the big rabbit going past my house this morning. I had a small conversation with him. He said the Easter Bunny is coming, so just so you know, he is still coming. And he is not concerned with COVID-19. So I have a recommendation, the bylaw number 2020-34 being a bylaw for Go ahead, somebody was...
It was Councillor Sutherland, sorry. I must have missed the part. I didn't get on to the meeting in time there, and I must have missed the additions to the agenda, and I spoke with Brittany about the fire ban. Could I speak towards that, Brittany, or...
Paul, can I let our CAO comment on that first?
Yep.
I'm sorry, Paul, did you want to put forward something on that? I mean, we've just gone to new business and I don't think we've moved on, so I'm fine with that.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, it was towards the fire ban that we've had in place from the provincial government. I've taken quite a few phone calls and emails and texts about it, and whether or not those specific properties are able to have fire bans. I think we should maybe just look at banning it in the whole township for the time being, so that our firefighters aren't exposed to any more potential viruses that they need to be at the time being. So just that was my kind of recommendation. I was wondering what the rest of council's thoughts were on that.
Could I speak to that, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
So we too, Councillor Sutherland, were getting quite a few phone calls, but we did put information on our website, and since then our phone calls have depleted. We did speak to the fire chief and the deputy fire chief, and their recommendations at this time were to not put a fire ban everywhere. Simply just number one, for something for people to do, to be able to have that recreation. They also alluded to the fact that Meaford did put in a fire ban, and they are actually getting more calls because of the fire ban at this time. So I think if you're okay, could we monitor it with the fire chief and deputy fire chief for their advice?
Go ahead, Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a great idea, and I like that you guys have reached out to Meaford and asked them how things went with that. So that's great to hear, and we will keep an eye on things, and hopefully we don't have to do that. But I do appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Anne-Marie. So if there's no other business, no other new business, I'll read the. Did someone else say something, or I keep getting feedback, so that's why I'm. No. Bylaw number 2034 being a bylaw to April 8, 2020 being be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed the corporation, and endorsed in the bylaw book. Do we somebody to move the motion, please?
Carol Barfoot.
Moved by Councillor Barfoot, second by
Paul.
Councillor Sullivan. Any discussion on the motion? Brittany, will you take the vote, please?
Absolutely. When I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion as presented. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland.
For.
Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
And at this time, I will note that Councillor Ryan Thompson left the meeting at 3:00 p.m., so his vote will be counted as absent. Councillor Grant Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
Thank you.
At this time, our next scheduled meeting is April 22nd, unless we hear different. So I need a motion to adjourn.
Deputy Mayor will move to adjourn.
Paul.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton, second by Councillor Sullivan, that we adjourn. Brittany, go ahead.
So when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against adjournment at 3:10 p.m. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland.
For.
Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson is absent. Councillor Grant Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
Thank you, and that carries.
Thanks, everybody. It's a good meeting. We'll see you next meeting. We're now adjourned.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.